Russian President Vladimir Putin has gone back to his old ways and started complaining to Donald Trump about Ukraine's behavior. Today, Vladimir Putin and Donald Trump had a 1.5-hour phone conversation. This was reported by Putin's aide Yuri Ushakov. And the first thing he pointed out was that Trump and Putin discussed the behavior of the Kiev regime in connection with the fires and the disaster in Tuapse, and today in Perm and Orsk-Orenburg region. That is, Putin once again, when he realized things were getting out of hand, immediately rushed to call Trump and complain about Ukraine so that Trump would put pressure on Zelensky. And by the way, Ushakov confirmed that the phone conversation took place at the initiative of Vladimir Putin. That is, Putin called to complain to Donald Trump. Let's quickly go over the latest developments in this episode and figure out what Putin and Trump talked about, according to Yuri Ushakov. And I should note that Trump himself said the day before that he is negotiating with both Zelensky and Putin to finally reach a peace agreement. To put it briefly, today Putin told Trump that he will achieve the goals of the special military operation by any means necessary. Trump said that he hopes for a peace agreement in the near future. And also, supposedly, Trump admired how Putin, in case you missed it, announced the Easter truce. And now Putin, against the backdrop of news that they will hold the Victory Day parade on May 9 without military equipment, that Putin is afraid, he stated that he proposes to Trump that Trump put pressure on Zelensky. And on May 9 they announced another truce for May 9. Well, so that, God forbid, nothing flies into Russia. This is a wonderful symbol and signal that Putin is really afraid. And he is so, proud, so menacing, like how they portray him as a bear in Russia. But this bear, as soon as there's trouble, he runs to complain to the American president. My name is Alexei Peachy. Let's discuss this topic. I kindly ask you to leave a like in advance and write any comment under this video, and be sure to subscribe to my Telegram channel, Peachy News. The link to it is in the description of this video. There we publish breaking news as it comes in. So, today is April 29th. Vladimir Putin, the Russian president, and Donald Trump, the president of the United States, held a 1.5-hour phone conversation. Putin's aide Yuri Ushakov spoke about it. I'll go on to quote his main points and we'll analyze them. Ushakov says, another phone conversation took place between the president of the Russian Federation, Vladimir Putin, and the president of the United States, Donald Trump. This conversation lasted over an hour and a half. The communication between the presidents was friendly, candid, and businesslike. That's quite understandable. It's clear that Vladimir Putin, first of all, expressed support for the President of the United States regarding the assassination attempt on him on April 25 at the Washington Hilton Hotel. Fortunately, neither Donald Trump himself nor his wife nor anyone in his entourage was harmed. The perpetrator was quickly neutralized by the security service. The Russian leader strongly condemned this crime, emphasizing in particular the inadmissibility of any form of politically motivated violence. This is unacceptable. And what about Navalny? Where is Navalny? Where is the entire Russian opposition? Where did it suddenly disappear to? Is it Putin who is going to talk about the inadmissibility of politically motivated violence? Well, never mind. Next, Ushakov speaks. By the way, it was mentioned that the dangerous incident happened right on the eve of the First Lady's April 26th birthday. Congratulations were sent to Melania Trump, and her contribution to the efforts to reunite Russian and Ukrainian children with their families was noted. What complete nonsense is this? That's what he's saying. He's commenting on how Melania and Trump helped to return Ukrainian children who were stolen and kidnapped by Russians from the occupied territories back to Ukraine. What kind of reunification of Russian and Ukrainian children is this? I continue to quote, among the issues on the international agenda, the presidents focused mainly on the situation around Iran in the Persian Gulf. Vladimir Putin believes that Donald Trump's decision to extend the ceasefire regarding Iran is the right one. This should give negotiations a chance and overall help stabilize the situation. At the same time, the president of Russia drew attention to the inevitable and extremely harmful consequences not only for Iran and its neighbors, but also for the entire international community if the US and Israel resort to military actions again. And of course, the option of a ground operation on Iranian territory seems completely unacceptable and dangerous. Russia is firmly determined to provide comprehensive assistance. Diplomatic efforts to find a peaceful resolution to the crisis and has put forward a number of proposals aimed at resolving disagreements over the Iranian nuclear program. It's obvious here what Putin proposed, and once again he's trying to push Trump like Let Iran give us its enriched uranium, we'll take it, we'll keep it, and supposedly Iran won't have it anymore. So that's the solution. Trump has said several times that he's not going to go along with that. I wouldn't be surprised if Putin proposed it again. Here's a quote. To this end, active contacts will continue with Iranian representatives, leaders of the Persian Gulf countries, as well as with Israel, and of course the team of American negotiators. I should note here that the day before, Iran's foreign minister Abbas Araghchi was in Moscow and St. Petersburg, where he met with Vladimir Putin specifically regarding the situation in the Middle East. Quote, Donald Trump gave his assessment of the results of the recently concluded phase of military confrontation, as well as his views on the difficult situation in which Iran and Europe now find themselves. As for a settlement in Ukraine, the American president emphasized the importance of ending hostilities as soon as possible, as well as his willingness to do everything possible to facilitate this. His trusted representatives continue to maintain contacts with Moscow and Kiev. Donald Trump believes that a deal to end the conflict in Ukraine is already close. At the request of Donald Trump, Vladimir Putin described the current situation on the line of contact, where our troops are holding the strategic initiative and pushing back the enemy's positions. I can just imagine Putin saying the same words to Trump. Let me continue the quote. Here, Ushakov is clearly appealing to the Russian voter, or rather, what voter, as if there are real elections in Russia, to the Russian citizen. And so Ushakov says. He says it was also mentioned that since the beginning of 2025, Russia has handed over more than 20,000 bodies of the dead to Ukraine, while they have given us just over 500. Both Vladimir Putin and Donald Trump essentially expressed similar views on the behavior of the Kiev regime led by Zelensky, who, encouraged and supported by the Europeans, is pursuing a policy of prolonging the conflict. So you understand, right? Putin is once again trying to drive a wedge between the US and Europe, especially after the British King's visit to Washington, against the backdrop of that visit. They're saying they can reach an agreement with you, but the Europeans and Ukrainians are blocking it. And most importantly, that's why I started this episode by saying that Putin is complaining just like a pathetic boy running to cry on the American president's shoulder. Then Ushakov says, quote, the Russian leader said directly that Kiev resorts to openly terrorist methods, attacking purely civilian targets on Russian territory. And what's that? And how many civilian targets has Russia attacked in Ukraine? It's been more than 4 years now, bastards. And this loser, she's talking now. Oh, Ukrainians. Why? Because they're scared. Putin, excuse me, has already shit in his little suitcase. He sees what's happening in Tuapse. He sees that everything is burning out there and no Russian air defense is helping. He understands perfectly well that the range of Ukrainian strikes on oil refineries in Russia has increased. He knows perfectly well that on one side there are Ust-Luga and Primorsk in the Leningrad region. 2 ports have burned down. The oil storage facilities, the ports and everything else have simply burned down. But he understands perfectly well that now Ukraine is hitting Tuapse too. That's also an oil storage facility, oil refineries and a port. Now Ukraine has moved on to Perm, they're hitting the oil refinery there. And Putin understands that he is powerless to resist this. So the only thing he can do is run away. And just like a snotty little boy, a short balding little guy, run away and complain, whine, Donald Trump, oh God, they're hurting us, the Ukrainians are attacking our territory, you shouldn't have started the war. Why did you filthy people start this war? Why are you running to the American president to complain? You're such a powerful leader, why are you whining? Next, Ushakov says, our president has once again confirmed that the goals of the special military operation will be achieved in any case. Of course, we would prefer this to be the result of a negotiation process. For this, Zelensky needs to respond positively to the well-known proposals that have been repeatedly put forward, including by the American side. This means giving up Donbass. It is notable that Donald Trump gave a positive assessment of the Easter truce Russia recently announced. In this regard, Vladimir Putin informed his American counterpart about his readiness to declare a truce during the Victory Day celebrations. He actively supported this initiative. It should be noted that the holiday marks our shared victory over Nazism in World War II. So that's how it is. It turns out it's already a shared victory. Notice how Putin is ingratiating himself with Trump. He's just fawning like that. Donald, this is our shared victory. We have a shared history, all that stuff. Although before, they used to say that it was only Russia that won. Everyone else, the West, didn't participate at all. As if the Americans had anything to do with it. Right. And also don't forget, Putin is actually afraid to hold a full parade with military equipment on May 9th. That's why he's now asking Trump. He says, please, can you put some pressure on Zelensky? Just ask them not to attack us, at least on May 9th. Otherwise, I'm going to look like a complete loser. That's it. Now I'll give you a direct quote. When discussing Russian-American relations, both sides talked about the great prospects for mutually beneficial projects in the economy and energy sectors. Moreover, there are a number of large-scale initiatives. As the presidents noted, economic initiatives are already being discussed in detail between representatives of our countries. That's where they're discussing it with Dmitry Svitkov. The presidents agreed to continue maintaining contacts, both personal and at the level of their aides and representatives. The presidents said warm goodbyes and wished each other all the best. And so Ushakov was asked who initiated the phone call. Ushakov said, quote, I would like to note that it was the initiative of the Russian side, of the Russian president. Well, that's what I said. Путину нужно было пожаловаться, поплакаться. He understands that just a couple more weeks of strikes like what's happening in Tuapse and all of Russia will simply be on fire. And just how vile this creature is, well, if you've declared war, if you're waging war, wage it honestly. Why are you running and crying? Why are you complaining to the American president? Well, there you go, and I wouldn't be surprised if now Donald Trump starts signaling that Ukraine shouldn't attack oil refineries in Russia. But fortunately, we're no longer so strongly tied to America. Trump himself stopped any military aid a long time ago. And the weapons that come from America to Ukraine under the Pural program are actually purchased with European money. It's purely business. Nothing more. The Europeans provide the money, the Americans produce weapons with that money and deliver them to Ukraine. So the only thing Trump can do is try to throw a wrench in the works. I'm more than sure that now he will speak out and say how good Vladimir Putin is, what a great guy he is, and Ukrainians, what are you doing? Are you attacking oil refineries, ports? You've caused an environmental disaster in Tuapse. Should I remind you how those savage Russians blew up the Kakhovka hydroelectric power station, flooding vast areas of Ukraine? Or should I remind you how a Russian drone struck the sarcophagus of the Chernobyl nuclear power plant? How much of an idiot do you have to be to send a drone there? Well, in general, I think you perfectly understood my main point. And here's what was to be expected. The American president is now meeting with members of the space mission at the White House. And during this meeting, of course, he announced that he had spoken with Vladimir Putin. And here's a quote for you. I think Vladimir Putin would like to find a solution regarding Ukraine. That's good. There you go. Then Trump stated that he hopes a solution to the war will be found relatively soon. There you go. How soon that will happen is completely unclear, and in addition, Trump stated, quote, I suggested to Vladimir Putin to implement a certain ceasefire. I think he might agree to it. He has already announced it, right? Well, he means on May 9th. That is, Trump says that it was he who suggested May 9th. I think it was actually Putin who was begging Trump to convince Zelensky not to attack them. So, well, what else did Trump say? He says Putin would have been ready to make a deal some time ago. I think some people prevented him from doing it. Here's a little reference for you. The Europeans are bad. I wouldn't be surprised if Trump now says it was the Europeans who interfered. That's Zelensky conspiring with the Europeans and refusing to go along. Well, and now, well, here you go. That's what was to be expected. Trump says Ukraine has already basically suffered a military defeat. Well, I just have no words left. I think at this point we can basically stop and not even pay attention to what Trump is going to say next. Because obviously they've teamed up with this Putin and now he's going to announce that that's it. Ukraine has lost. Ukraine has lost. Plus, remember just the other day when Donald Trump met with the British King Charles III, he whispered to him, you know, Putin told me that he's ready to start such a war. He'll destroy the entire population there. He's ready for an even bigger war. Trump got scared. He's really afraid. That's why I'm not surprised by his statements. Now they'll claim again that Zelensky has no cards. Anyway, I won't take up more time. Friends, the most important thing is that Ukraine is now building completely different relationships with Europe and with the countries of the Persian Gulf. Just recently, Zelensky visited Azerbaijan. And it's obvious that this very partnership is being reoriented. Well, and Trump, that's it. I'll say this at the end. The war in Ukraine might end before the war with Iran. He hopes that it will happen very soon, that's all. If he really hopes that he'll just say now that like Ukraine has lost and Zelensky will surrender, I don't think that's gonna happen. He has tried this several times already. I'll leave it at that. Share your opinion and conclusions in the comments below this episode. Subscribe to the channel, hit the bell, and don't forget to like. If you want to support the work of this YouTube channel, you can do so using any method. The details and links are in the description of this video. Or by using the QR code on your screens. I will be grateful for any support you can give. That's all for now. Take care. Goodbye, to be continued.